Hi, I'm Susan Drumm, and welcome to the Enlightened Executive, where your personal evolution sparks your leadership evolution. Each episode, we feature groundbreaking techniques and strategies to help you get the edge in personal and leadership effectiveness. This episode is brought to you by Meritage Leadership. At Meritage, we strengthen leaders and empower teams to achieve high performance. Go to meritageleadership.com to learn more. Are you curious about your own development path to enlightened leadership? Take our free 5-minute quiz at susandrum.com to discover your superpower and the roadblocks that could get in your way of effective leadership. Today, we're looking at social entrepreneurship, and I'm delighted to introduce Daniel McCollum. Daniel is the founder and chairman of Torrent Consulting, a Salesforce consulting partner with office locations in the US and Guatemala, and also founder and CEO of Torrent Impact Sourcing, an ethical sourcing company focused on helping businesses in the US access the talent in Guatemala. Raised in Charlotte, North Carolina, Daniel has previously lived in Moscow, Malawi, and now Antigua, Guatemala, and has studied different cultures and businesses in different areas of the world. So welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Susan. It's great to be here with you.
Well, you have had a very interesting journey living abroad. So perhaps we could start there. And one of the things I'm particularly interested in is the patterns that you discovered you were leading in your life and how some of these moves really shifted them or shook it up and what you discovered on the other side of breaking a pattern. So maybe we can start a little bit about your journey and the different areas of the world that you've lived in.
Yeah. So I think, I graduated with a computer science degree. And after doing a 2-year mission in Moscow, Russia, in my early 20s, I spent the rest of my 20s working in consulting. And I did a stint in corporate consulting. I did nonprofit consulting, and really love consulting. I love the idea of coming in and helping a business or organization from the outside. And so, but in 2009, my wife and I decided we were going to move overseas to Malawi, Africa, which is a small country in southern part of Africa. It's landlocked. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. And so we both quit our jobs. I was doing consulting. I quit my job, and right as we were going into the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, and then my wife was a school teacher and she quit as well. And so we went to Malawi, and I think
Wait, why? Now, so what happened that has someone says, I'm gonna go move to Malawi, a small landlocked country in the middle of Africa?
yeah, I think my wife had lived in India for a year working in an orphanage. She took a year off when she was 19. She took a year off college. And so we both had a global mindset, I think. And so we said, "Hey, wouldn't it be awesome if we went somewhere to serve and kind of give back before we start to try to have kids and have a family and get too locked down, right?" And so we wanted to just have that experience together. And so we had a connection there, not with somebody we knew. It was a brother of a friend of ours. And so we talked a few times, and he said, "If you come over, I'll put you to work helping people." And so, yeah, we went over to, we showed up not speaking the language and not really knowing a lot about, we'd never been to that part of the world, but really with a
Wow.
desire to help people. So, I think looking back for me, I'd spent almost 10 years in my career, my 20s, and, doing, like I said, consulting and in the nonprofit space and the corporate space. And I think looking back, I was a bit at a crossroads probably. I tell people I had my midlife crisis at 31. So, I think I was searching for something more,
Mhm.
and didn't know what it was, but just felt drawn to take that big. I mean, it's a big leap of faith, right? To just
Yeah.
pick up, and we packed our condo and rented it out and went for a year.
Wow. And so that's a big pattern interruption, right? And I love though that it wasn't, and one of the things we'll be talking about is like, do you have to break a pattern or make a change based on pain, or can it come from a different direction? And it sounds like in this instance, it was more an awareness of just feeling unfulfilled and wanting to find a source of fulfillment in your life.
Yeah, I have. this pattern is, as you mentioned, I'm living in Guatemala now. I've been here 7.5 years, but I do think as I've reflected on this, as I've gotten, I think my journey in life has taken me farther. And I've reflected on this. I think there is something internal, I think, that has driven me, right? And maybe I'll have a chance to get into it in a little bit, but I do think this idea, like people ask me, like, well, why'd you move? And I'm like, I don't know. It was like something internal in me, right? It wasn't a rash decision. It was very thought out. It was wrestling for probably a year or two and for each of these moves, but there was something deep in me, right? My spirit was like calling me to leave and go to these places, right? And so that was what was happening. And fortunately, I have an amazing wife who also was willing to go on the journey and had the same desire, right, to go explore the world and give back in the process. And we talk in our family about the McCollum adventures. Like I think it's this a bit of an adventure mindset, and so yeah. So I think in 2009 we decided to do that. It was this internal desire, right, and drive, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And when you got there, what was your experience and what did you learn? How did it change you?
Yeah. So what I learned, I had wrestled with this idea because I had worked in the nonprofit space and I had worked in, call it corporate consulting, right? A career, kind of the corporate America like dream, right? And so I had wrestled with like trying to choose between one or the other. One side being I want to live a life that's impacting people and making a difference in the world. And then the other life was like, I love technology. I'm a consultant. I'm an entrepreneur, which I probably didn't really even know at the time fully, but like now I really know I am an entrepreneur. That is what I breathe. And so, but I wrestled with those two. Like I felt like I had to choose one path or the other. So when you show up to a country like Malawi with 16 million people and the poverty that I saw, I mean, you quickly, as a problem solver, a leader, a social entrepreneur, or an entrepreneur, like you start to ask, like, well, how do you help people, right? It's like there's the problem's so big. And so I was fortunate because I was able to plug into some microfinancing programs that were going on, and I learned a lot about that. I started reading books about this new concept, social entrepreneurship. I mean, it was in 2009, it was a pretty new word, even in a phrase. And I think Tom's Shoes was kind of the first big social business that really became mainstream. And so I also connected with a few social entrepreneurs that were living there, building businesses, employing people. They were using their profits to build hospitals and orphanages, and they saw their employees as like their extended, family. And so I mean, when you're sitting there and seeing that and experiencing that, it just had an immense impact. And, I tell people Malawi wasn't life changing for me, but it was life clarifying. It really brought those two ideas of how do I help people with my life? And then how do I use my entrepreneurial skills? Hence the word social entrepreneur. It's like we're trying to solve a social problem using entrepreneurial means, business means, right? And so, yeah, I tell people I had to go 8,000 miles away from like Charlotte, my upbringing and my world to actually see and live that out for a year. And it was a hard year. It was challenging. I wrestled a lot, right? Malawi's not an easy place to live. It's hard to get to. And, it's certainly a difficult place to live, but I left with a sense of purpose in my life that at 32, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. I don't
Yeah.
know what, that's the framework. I don't know what it all looks like. I didn't know at the time, at least, this was 15 years ago. And so coming back to Charlotte, I had no idea what that was going to look like. I just knew in my heart, like, this is how I'm supposed to spend my life. I'm supposed to help people through business, period.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what a gift that is, right? And so it
Yeah.
required you breaking the traditional path, the pattern that you would normally be in. And I'm sure some people thought you were crazy. Like, wow, how are you possibly going to go and do this? And yet, coming out of it, you had a clarity of this is my purpose in life. Do you know how many times I hear people say, I just don't know what my purpose is or what I'm supposed to be doing, right? And
Yeah.
and sometimes you've got to dig deep and follow that intuition, that guide
Hmm.
for how it's going to reveal itself. The same thing happened to me. At 30, I go to drama school and get a master's in acting 5 years after law school. That's crazy. But I
Yeah.
was following this deep intuition that I needed to go that way. And it opened up the career that I do today, as a
It's
result.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me when so you came back and you're like, I know what I need to do. Then what happened?
So I went back to my old job. I was fortunate they hired me back, which was not a given when I left. So I came back and to do consulting in the nonprofit space, and I ended up I spent 2 more years there, and so I got to another crossroads the spring of 2012, and so there had been some turnover in my organization. And honestly, I was just wrestling again with like, oh man, I learned this big lesson 2 years ago living in Malawi, and then I came back and we had our first child during that time, and I was working, but I was just wrestling, and I got to another crossroads. I had a new job opportunity to go back into corporate consulting. I was enrolled to go get an international MBA because I was like, I have this global mindset, and it was at one of the top programs in the country, and it just didn't feel right. You use the word intuition. I think that's probably one of the most undervalued words and terms in our lives in business even. And so, yeah, I remember I was on the phone. It was May 2012, and I was on the phone with my wife, and I was like, they're going to call me in an hour to ask if I'm going to accept this job. What do I say? And she's like, I think you need to pursue your dream. I think you need to go out and start your own business. And I'd always I kind of always had in the back of my mind this desire, I'm going to go out on my own, hence the entrepreneurial,
Yeah.
right? Like driving me. And like I said, I didn't really realize that probably in my 20s, but by my 30s, I started to realize like I'm probably supposed to be an entrepreneur, not go sit in a gray cubicle, right, in one of the towers and get paid well and get an MBA. But that was not. Yeah, so they called and I said no. I turned down the job, and then I quit my job 4 weeks later and started my first company, Torrent Consulting, in the middle of June 2012.
Yes, yes. So you started the consulting, and what was it primarily focused on?
Well, eventually, it took us about a year and a half to kind of figure out what we were going to niche in, but we ended up becoming a Salesforce.com consulting partner. So I picked up some of those skills and had some previous CRM experience and some of my other previous jobs. And so, yeah, we went all in and said, we're going to go be a Salesforce consulting company in mostly in the Southeast of the US and the Midwest is where we started. And we started with small businesses. I mean, really tiny work, and just, that what I realized by 2013 and 2014 as we started to get focused was I kind of had this aha one day. Oh, I'm going to build the business that I think should exist in the world. Because I was always wrestling. I wish other people would build XYZ type of business with purpose, care for your employees, right? All the things that I believe in that, that are impactful to people. And I was kind of always projecting it on other people, like, they should do that. They should do it. And I just realized, like, it dawned on me one day, is like, well, maybe I'm supposed to just build the business that I think should exist in the world. And that's what I did. That's what we started. I had a business partner at the time, and yeah, we started growing really rapidly over the next 3 or 4 years in that space. We showed up and did what we said with our customers, and amazing how far that goes these days when you're building a business.
And what was the business? What were the tenets of the business that you wanted to create that you weren't experiencing otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I think all around putting people first was the big piece, right? I think people first, creating a culture and environment where people could come in and thrive and grow. And at the time, right, we were in person. We had several offices, but everybody was working together in our couple offices in the US. And so we just created this family type environment, especially when we were 30, 40 people. And so, but it was really around people first. I mean, and I think leadership development, that was a big part of our language and like focus, was like, we're going to raise up leaders. We're going to bring the right people in that have the right values, and they can learn some of the skills that are needed in that industry. but yeah, that was the big piece. I think starting out those first 3 or 4 years, that really was the centering of in the values that we cared about as a company.
Yeah, it just sounds like you were very intentional about the type of culture and where your priorities were. And the priority was creating an amazing environment for people to work so
Yeah.
that you could better serve your customers. What were the results then of leading a business from that perspective?
Well, I mean, we grew rapidly. We saw great results. I mean, I think part of it, the industry we were in was really hot. So there was a lot of demand for our services, but also I think we were able to attract people and create an environment where people thrived and create a culture that was, people centric. And so, yeah, I would say that was the first result. The second result, by 2016, we started we started thinking about opening an office outside the US. So I still had this, having lived in Moscow for 2 years and then living in Malawi for 2 years, or for a year. I had this deep seed and dream and vision around opening an office outside the US. And really, we were in a space where the millions of jobs were being created every year in the Salesforce space. Just wasn't enough talent to do the work that was in demand for implementing, configuring Salesforce, training companies on it, setting it up, maintaining it. And so I met when I was in Malawi in 2009. I met a kid one day who was studying computer science, and I started talking to him, and we just kind of hit it off. Obviously, I studied computer science 10 years earlier, and I was just blown away. Middle of Africa, this kid's about to graduate with a computer science degree.
Oh,
I was just fascinated, but there were no jobs there. That's what I learned. So I actually helped him get a job with a company in the US. They shipped him a laptop, and he was doing data entry work, and he was making 12 times what somebody was making there. Just kind of, I'll say, like, simple work, a simple connection that I made. And that just left a deep impression with me. I'm like, man, if there is talent that is, and this was 15 years ago, if there's talent in the middle of Africa, like there's talent all over the world that's just untapped, right? I was kind of just blown away. So
mhm.
fast forward to 2016, we're growing, we needed talent. And I started thinking a lot about opening an office outside the US in a place where we could make an impact, right? Where we could come in and say, hey, we're going to train you on these skills that are in high demand. You're going to be part of our company. And through that process, we think we can impact a lot of people. So, yeah, so we ended up in Guatemala. I tell people we didn't find Guatemala, it found us.
Yeah, how was that? How did that happen?
Oh man, basically my wife and I had traveled here for a week on vacation in 2012 before I started our company, and visiting some friends of hers who I didn't even know, and so we just kind of traveled through. And so when we started thinking about back in 2016, thinking about opening an office outside the U.S., Guatemala just kept coming to our minds. I mean, I think you have 2/3 of the population here living kind of day to day and doing informal work, right? Not having a formal job. You have about 70% of the population living in poverty, but yet it's so close. I kept thinking to the US. I kept thinking, like, this is in our backyard. I mean, literally, it's a 3-hour flight to Atlanta, Dallas, Houston, 2 hours to Miami. And I just
Mhm.
kept thinking, like, this is like so close. Like, this isn't a 2-day trip. This is,
Mhm.
you can leave in the morning and be eating lunch in the afternoon in Guatemala. And so that that idea, I think it just kind of set with me. And I don't know, I just kind of we felt like this would be an amazing place to open an office and make an impact. There was nobody here that knew Salesforce. It wasn't, we had to come in and interview and train everybody from scratch. But so my company thought I was crazy when I showed up and said, hey, we're going to open an office in Guatemala. People were like, oh, is there a lot of Salesforce talent there? We're like, nope, we're going to, Daniel has this crazy idea that we can open an office and we can train people to do this work and employ them and pay them, treat them really well, pay them well, et cetera. So yeah, that was what we decided in 2016. And so I started traveling down here, helping getting our legal entity set up. And I mean, we had no idea what we were doing. Like, we were just we said, let's just set this thing up. So I was here in March 2017. So 8 years ago around this time. And I was interviewing our first group of people. And I remember I got on a plane, flew to Los Angeles for a client meeting, landed. I think I was on the tarmac at LAX. I was texting my wife and I was like, this is going to work. Like, these people we interviewed are amazing. Like, this is going to work. And I said, but I don't know, like, how we're going to get the office completely set up, the culture set, and all of that. So that was like on a Wednesday. And then I went back to Charlotte on Thursday. And by Thursday night, she was like, well, maybe we should move there for 2 years and like take our 6-year-old, 4-year-old, 1-year-old and move to Guatemala for 2 years and just help get it started. So honestly, by the weekend, we had decided like, this is what we're going to do. Like, we'll move down there. And I think a big part I felt like, because we were like, well, maybe we get somebody else to move, right? So we did have an employee move here for the first year in 2016, and he had committed a year and was about to finish that up. And I was like, well, who else could we ask? And I think I'm just the type of person. It's like, I'd never want to ask somebody something to do something that I'm not willing to do. Doesn't mean I'm supposed to do everything, but like that I'm not willing to do. And we just felt like, hey, we're willing to move and see this through. So we packed up and moved down in August 2017. My wife and 3 kids and 10 suitcases, and thought we were going to be here 2 years, and that was 7.5 years ago. So we kind of got sucked into Guatemala.
Yes, yes. And so what are the key lessons learned in building or thinking this way and building the culture that has created some huge successes for you?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things from the very beginning, I was very passionate about, like, we are going to treat this and everybody we hire in Guatemala as like our employees. We're not outsourcing. We're not treating it like offshore. Like, no, these are our employees. This is just another office. It happens to be in Antigua, Guatemala, which is a beautiful place. So I'll plug that. But
Yes.
yeah, I think in every decision we made, we tried to say, how do we treat them exactly the same? Our benefits, like, and you can't do everything the same just because, for instance, 401k matching, right? Like, we couldn't do that because they don't have 401k here, but we did do something very similar, a long-term savings matching. And so I think it was a mindset of like, these are valuable teammates. They have career opportunities. They have the same career paths as our people in the US. And so, yeah, we just started from that mindset. And I think the big thing is around talent. It's seeing people as very talented human beings. There is talent around the world. The opportunities do not exist around the world the same way as they do, say, in the US or other countries. And so that was a phrase I stole. So I'm not going to take credit for it, but I do use it a lot. Talent is distributed equally, opportunity is not. So I just think that mindset, when you see somebody, they walk in, they're starting with your company, whether in Guatemala or in the US, like, hey, this is a highly talented person, we believe, and we're going to invest in them. And we think sky's the limit in their career here at Torrent.
Yeah.
And that is a novel concept in Central America and Latin America and in a lot of places, right? And so that's not how US companies typically come and view and engage in a country like Guatemala, where there's a lot of call centers and outsourcing and BPO centers. So yeah, I would say that made the biggest difference.
Yeah, you integrated this into the culture. When
Yeah.
people just think of, I'm going to outsource or offshore talent, they don't actually integrate the person into their culture and make it part of the company. And I think your success has shown that by doing that, and that mindset shift that this is part of our company and therefore we'll treat it equally, has made a big difference in terms of, I imagine you're a magnet for talent down there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can pretty much hire almost anybody here because of our culture, right? And the opportunity for career paths. A lot of places you might be able to get a job if you have a tech background here and experience, but the ceiling is really low, is what we've learned. And so in our company, we've tried not to we have a 15-year career path for our people, and
Wow.
it's about 15 years in the US and in Guatemala. It's the same career path. And it's like, hey, if you come in at this level, there's all this opportunity. It is in our best interest as a business to actually see you advance, because the more skilled you get, the we want to promote you. We can pay you more. You're going to be more valuable on our projects to our customers, et cetera. Like that's kind of the consulting model, right? And so, yeah, that we haven't put a ceiling on that, and I think that's made a big difference.
Well, first of all, you're not dealing with the turnover. You're not dealing with spending all the time trying to source new talent because you're a talent magnet. And then the future forward thinking of a 15-year career path so
Hmm.
that people can see how they could be with you for a long time. They're more willing to invest their heart and soul in the company if they can see that level of runway.
Yeah,
I don't see that happening. I feel like there is such a short-term mentality that both talent and leaders have
yeah.
today in most US businesses.
For sure. I see that all the time. And we really had to have about a 3-year horizon when we started. It's like, okay, where can we get this first batch of people, right? The first hires in Guatemala and the first couple groups, let's call it 8 to 10. Where can they be in 2 or 3 years? Can we get them 3 or 4 certifications and, Salesforce certifications? Can we get a promotion in there? Like, can we get them to a certain level? And that's really, I mean, it took a couple of years, and then we started to see the fruits of that, right? And then people started to believe, and we're like, okay, let's bring the next batch in, and let's expand. Let's try this type of person or persona, right? With this type of background, can we get them in and have them be successful? So, yeah, that's, essentially that's where the first 5 years in Guatemala, I would say, from 2016 to about 2020, 2021, like that, we were building all of that out.
Yeah, yeah. What else have you learned by building this company in Guatemala and how you're running the business that you think would be valuable for other leaders in the world, other entrepreneurs and executives?
Yeah, I mean, I think this idea of talent is distributed equally around the world, right? I mean, and the studies show this, right? Where you're born, your zip code, where you start life at, right, is a big factor on like where you end up in life, what opportunities you get, right? And so, I think that's a big thing is like when you see somebody, and I talk to leaders who they already have people around the world, right? People reach out to me a lot and say, "Hey, can we talk to you about what you're doing?" I just had somebody from Kenya reach out to me that I'm meeting with next week, and so, hey, I heard what you're doing. I'm very interested. I think very similarly. Can we talk, right? And so, I think especially for companies that have people and talent around the world, and at this point, a lot of businesses do it, or whether it's a virtual assistant somewhere or a team of people somewhere, like that's pretty common now. So I think seeing them as highly talented individuals full of potential, right, is I think is a big, that's kind of the primary lens I see, and maybe that's a little bit of my, I don't know if gift is the right word. I mean, I'll walk into a restaurant here in Antigua and start talking, and they're like, oh, their English is good. Like, what kind of jobs could they be doing, right? Like, what kind of career could they have? Like, I'm just wired that way when it comes to this idea of, seeing talent as full of potential. So, so I think that's a big thing. I mean, that's probably a big thing for me. And I think we kind of built our impact was really built on off the foundation of putting people first, right? Which I think early in our company, like I mentioned, the first 4 or 5 years, like that was really big.
Mhm.
And then we went to this next level of like impact, right? And like went a whole layer deeper of how do we create really good jobs and transformational work. And now I mean, it's been 8 years, and I get to have a front row seat to it every day here in Guatemala. Like I see and hear the stories of the transformation that a really good job with a good company that cares about a human, makes on somebody's life. Whether they're in the
Amazing.
US or Guatemala, it really doesn't matter when it comes to that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, just the fact that you lead with the people come first, you're not saying our clients come first, which was a lot of businesses would say. You're
Yeah.
saying your people, your team comes first. I imagine some people might be like, well, you've got it backwards. What would you say to that?
Well, it's interesting. The founder of Southwest Airlines used to get asked this question a lot back in the 70s and 80s from what I've read, because I've read some of the books about him. And so, I think my mentality is if you have if you take care of your people, they're the ones touching the customers every day, right? And so if they feel taken care of, if they feel invested into, if they feel like they're working for a company that truly values them, right? They're not just a number or a widget on a spreadsheet, but they're really valued. And then those people, how are they going to turn around and serve your customers? Probably enthusiastically, right? They're going to work well as a team, and we work on project teams, right? Those teams need to be highly functional in how they work together, right? And so I think that's always been the mindset: take care of the people that are taking care of the customers. So now it doesn't mean the customers don't matter. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
of
think there's
course.
a lot of growth for us actually in that I think you can maybe I think there's more we can emphasize on, like, how do we serve our customers even better, right? And so, but I think that's just always been like my thought is like take care of your people, because they're the people. I'm not talking to my customers every day, right? Like we have 135 people in our consulting business. Like, they're touching our 75 customers every day, not me. So I need them to be healthy and feel like they're valued, right, and in a good place. And then in turn, my belief is they turn around and do that to the people they're touching, which is primarily their customers and their project team members.
Yeah, yeah, great. Oh my gosh. Well, there's so much more we could delve into. I just would love to kind of leave our listeners with what's one piece of advice that you would give to an executive or an entrepreneur in terms of how they need to think about leading their teams.
Yeah, I know we hit on it earlier, so I'm gonna go with this idea of intuition. So this is a little bit of so I've been spending a lot of time on this idea of stillness. And I heard this recently. There are four ways to be still. You can pray, you can meditate, you can contemplate, and you can journal. And so I think even as I told the stories, like, well, why did I make this decision or that decision? Like, I mean, I think it's intuition, but I was doing some of these things. So I'm not saying I did them all and like every day consistently, but I think like I've been really focused on meditation and starting my days focused on meditation right now. And so I feel the shift happening because I've been doing this about 2.5 months since the beginning of the year. And so, but I think just stillness, like stopping, thinking. So meditation, like listening is a listening skill. Contemplation is taking a topic and like really like thinking, like taking time to think. And I think as an executive, as a leader, the days are really busy, the calendars are full, and there's always, we have so many distractions, right? And we all know this, right? It's like, well, my phone gets, there's a notification
Yeah,
every 20 seconds and I'm looking
yeah,
at it 87 times a day. So I think like having this skill, it's a skill and I'm trying to learn and focus on it, like to have these stillness practices so that, because I think that's where intuition probably really comes from, right? It comes
yeah,
from that. And I know as I've thought back, right, about some of these big decisions and why I made them, they're hard to explain. I think intuition is probably the best word. It's like I felt it, but it wasn't I woke up and felt it. It was like after months of wrestling and contemplating and journaling and seeking wisdom, then we made the decision X
yeah.
to do XYZ. So that's probably what I would say. It's like, I mean, these are easy, free practices. I've, found meditations on Spotify that are free and you can go out and start tomorrow morning for 10 minutes. Right. And they're not,
Yeah.
they're not big barriers to starting. So,
Yeah.
um, so
Well, you
anyways,
can't, yeah, you can't listen to your intuition if you're always which is an internal voice, if you're always engaging externally 24/7 practically.
correct.
It's very hard then to get that wisdom that only
Yeah.
you can access. And I love what you said that you just do that through stillness. So
Yeah. Yeah.
love it. Well, where can people learn more about you and your company?
torrentconsulting.com. That's our Salesforce consulting company. Torrent Impact Sourcing. So we didn't get to talk about this much, but it's a new company I started to help other businesses in the US basically do what we did, find talent in Guatemala. We help with that. and we help you employ that talent, build teams here, integrated teams like we have done. It's basically a turnkey service that I started about a year and a half ago. So torrentimpactsourcing.com is the other place you can look. And then I'm on LinkedIn, Daniel J. McCollum. So on LinkedIn, you can find me there too.
Awesome. Well, how wonderful to have somebody have an access point there and be able to take all the lessons learned and build off the trail that you've blazed with your sourcing company. So that's fantastic.
Yes, for sure.
Well, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Susan. I really appreciate it. It's been great.
Absolutely. And if you like this episode, you're not going to want to miss my interview with Jay Rosenschwig, another social impact entrepreneur and humanitarian who discusses the importance of carving out meaningful relationships and integrating humanitarian efforts into business practices. Let's lead the way. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'd like to point you to the next important step. Hit the subscribe button and the bell to get notified when we release new content. I'll see you on the next episode of The Enlightened Executive.